We found your child on the balcony, so we took her into custody. A police stood at the door when the doorbell rang in the middle of a winter night. I was confused. After all, my only daughter was sleeping with me. The girl the police had with him was about 5 years old, her lips were blue, and she was shivering. She's not my child. I don't know her. Even after I told him this, the police, still doubtful, said he would take her to the hospital. Her hair was unkempt and grown out, and her dirty clothes were tattered. Unwashed, looking about the same age as my daughter, but very thin. Who is this girl? Why was she on my balcony? At that time, I had no idea about the tumultuous events that were about to unfold around this girl. I am Vanessa, a 32-year-old company employee. I lived on the first floor of a condominium bought by my parents, with my high school classmate husband, John, and our 5-year-old daughter Mary. John, a company employee, was often busy with business trips and absent even on weekends, helping colleagues with their work. One day, while John was away on a business trip, the doorbell rang while my daughter and I were home alone. It was a police on the intercom in the middle of a winter night. Confused by this unexpected visitor, I went out to find the police saying, "We found your child on the balcony and took her into custody." I was utterly baffled. What? If you mean my daughter, she's sleeping inside. What? The police was surprised, but I was more shocked. I hadn't heard any noise of the girl entering the balcony while sleeping. The girl with the police was about 5 years old, her lips blue and shivering. It was cold enough for snow that day, so it was no surprise. She's not my child. I don't know her. Even after I told him this, the doubtful police said, "We're taking her to the hospital now." I felt sorry for the girl, who seemed so cold. So I brought a warm blanket from inside and wrapped it around her. Her hands were like ice. She was still so young, yet she held back tears and bit her lip without making a sound. Her hair was disheveled, and her tattered clothes were dirty at the collar, unwashed. She looked very thin and poorly nourished. Who is this girl? Why was she on my balcony? I was puzzled and saddened to think of a child the same age as my daughter suffering like this. I couldn't sleep much that night, worried about the girl, and then I got a call from my husband. Anything unusual happen while I was away on a business trip? Actually, an unknown girl was on our balcony. The police took her to the hospital. It was shocking. Why didn't you take care of her yourself? What? But she's a stranger, there's nothing I can do. You're a mother, too. You should have taken care of that little girl instead of leaving her to the police. That's so sad. I was puzzled by my husband's sudden anger. How did he know she was a little girl? I hadn't mentioned that. When I questioned him, his response was evasive. Well, actually, that girl is the daughter of an acquaintance. Her mother is gone, and I thought she was pitiable. So I brought her here yesterday, thinking you would take care of her. That's... You weren't on a business trip? You should have explained the situation properly. Although my husband apologized, I couldn't believe he had left a small child on the balcony on such a cold day. Even if she was dressed warmly, she could have easily frozen. So, where are you and what are you doing now? My husband said he was looking for the girl's mother, but I felt he was hiding something. After he returned from his business trip, the police handed the girl over to him, and he left her with me. Did you find her mother? What about her father? No, not yet found. And I don't know about the father. By the way, who is this acquaintance? Just someone I know. Enough. I have another business trip. Wait. What about this girl? Ignoring my protests, my husband left, leaving the girl behind. I thought his behavior was odd, and while looking through his belongings for clues, I found something in the pocket of his suit. Shocked by its contents, I tried calling him, but he was unreachable. Suddenly, I noticed my daughter Mary and the girl looking up at me anxiously. "What's your name?" "Cindy." After Cindy, in a fidgety manner and a small voice, revealed she was also 5 years old. The same age as my daughter, I smiled kindly at her. Startled, she stared back at me, smiled, and then held her grumbling stomach. "Are you hungry?" "Yes." When I made pasta for my daughter and Cindy, she stared at it intently, as if it was something unusual, and began to eat eagerly. She ate so quickly that her mouth was covered in sauce. When I reached out with a tissue to wipe her face, Cindy quickly covered her head with both hands as if to protect herself, which gave me an uneasy feeling. "It's okay. I'm just going to wipe your mouth." After I spoke gently to her, Cindy relaxed, turned her face towards me, and let me wipe the sauce off. Then she started eating the pasta again. Cindy looked completely satisfied after finishing her meal, but her dirty body needed to be taken care of. As I prepared the bath and helped her undress, I gasped when I saw her body. "What is this?" Her body was covered with numerous bruises, as if she had been hit and pinched. Trying not to show my agitation, I cheerfully took her to the bathroom. When I tried to wash her, Cindy said, "It's okay. I can do it myself," and started to fill a tub with water, for some reason. "Wait a minute. What are you doing?" She looked up at me with a puzzled expression, as I unintentionally spoke in a scolding tone. "This is how I always do it." "What? You wash with water?" She nodded at my question, and just as she was about to pour water over herself, I hurriedly stopped her and carefully washed her entire body with soap. After that, when we got into the bathtub together, she murmured, "It's so warm," and seemed to enjoy the warmth. I learned that she rarely had the opportunity to bathe at home, and on the few occasions she did, her mother told her to wash with water. The realization that she had accepted this as normal without question tightened my heart. After the bath, I dressed Cindy in my daughter Mary's clothes and neatly arranged her hair, and she looked completely different. Standing next to my daughter, they looked just like sisters. I watched them with a smile as Cindy and my daughter, who somewhat resembled each other, were getting along like real sisters. Cindy was an honest and quiet child, clearly craving affection. She would come to me while I was cooking, tug at the hem of my skirt, and smile at me. When it was time to sleep, she held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go. Mary also became very fond of Cindy, and the two of them grew close like real sisters. Even after a week, I still couldn't get in touch with my husband. He had said that Cindy's mother was an acquaintance of his, but I couldn't keep looking after a small child indefinitely with just that information. I gave up trying to contact my husband and consulted the police, and it was decided that Cindy would go to a facility. Tears rolled down her big eyes, and she kept looking back at me as she was taken away by the facility staff, filling me with sadness. Time passed without any news from my husband, and I finally made a decision. 9 years later, I was living in my parents' house with my daughter Mary and Cindy. I had adopted Cindy after she was taken to the facility. My parents also treated her like their real granddaughter, saying she came to us by fate. The two girls grew up beautifully and closely as sisters. Their dream of becoming models came true, and recently, Mary and Cindy became junior models featured in magazines as beautiful sisters. Stepping into the glamorous world, the two girls, Cindy and Mary, were aiming for greater success with lively expressions on their faces. One day, the doorbell at my parents' house rang, and when I opened the door, there stood my ex-husband John, looking shabby and worn out. Behind him was an unknown woman who introduced herself as Kim. not wanting to cause a scene outside where the neighbors might see. I let them into the house. Then, sitting on the living room sofa, the two of them suddenly started talking. Actually, Cindy is my child. John, who hadn't been in touch for 9 years and didn't even apologize, made this statement. I sighed in disbelief. I thought so. She does resemble you. And? Is this woman your partner? John nodded at my question and started telling the story of how he met Kim. Kim had been working at a bar he frequented. And even though she knew he had a wife and child, they got involved. And she became pregnant with Cindy. However, John couldn't decide to divorce me, and Kim grew tired of parenting and abandoned it. Desperate, John thought of having me raise Cindy. It was a convenient story, but I was even more surprised by what followed. Please. Give Cindy back to us. My ex-husband suddenly stood up from the sofa, knelt down, and made this outrageous request, almost sobbing. Really? I saw her by chance in a magazine. She's become so beautiful. Isn't she popular now? What does that have to do with you? She has nothing to do with you too. But I am Cindy's real mother. You're just a fake, after all. After all this time, you have the nerve to say that without any contact. At that moment, John, who had been kneeling, clung to my feet with a pitiful look. We're in trouble with no money. Cindy is our only hope. Please give her back. How low? You plan to make Cindy work to support you? I refuse. What? You're just using Cindy and Mary to make money, aren't you? That's unfair. Stop making accusations. Their money is saved in their own bank accounts. Cindy is my child too. I will never give her back. Then Kim stood up from the sofa, looking as if she was about to grab me without any restraint, and I felt fear. What are you doing to my mom? Stop it. Cindy then rushed in. She stood in front of me with her arms spread wide, staring down Kim. Cindy, you've become so beautiful. Do you remember me? I'm your mom. Let's go home together. You're not my mother. Get out of this house. Cindy clung to me and started crying. Although she was young at the time, it seems she faintly remembers the terrible things she went through. Cindy, you're mistaken. Remember, you were very young back then. At this point, I presented the note and photo I had found in John's suit back then. The note read, I don't want to raise a child. I can't find Cindy cute. Please get rid of her somewhere. If you won't marry me, let's run away together. And the photo showed a young Cindy covered in bruises. Of course, there were also hospital reports. Even now, do you still say you're her parents? That, well, you tried to push a child you didn't want to raise onto me, right? Such a sweet child, you made her go through such horrible things. That was all John's doing. I didn't know about it. I was too young to raise a child, it couldn't be helped. Anyway, I'm taking Cindy back. Unfortunately, that's not possible. Cindy and I have legally adopted each other, so I'm her parent by law. What? No way. That's a lie. Kim's momentum visibly waned upon hearing about the law. But John still seemed unwilling to give up. If that's the case, I'll completely break up with Kim and let's start over. Mary and Cindy are both my kids. We can just go back to being a couple like before, no problem, right? What are you saying now? You just want to have it all your way? Like I'd let that happen. Listening to their exchange, I was more dumbfounded than angry. I didn't want anything to do with these people. I have some more unfortunate news for you, John. We are no longer married. Huh? After you went missing, 3 years passed, and I filed for divorce, which was granted. What? Why did you do that on your own? Just as John was about to grab me, the sound of a police car approached. My parents had called the police after seeing Kim's aggressive behavior. Well, the police are here now, so please don't come to our house ever again. No. Please forgive me. I'll give up on Cindy, but at least lend me some money. John showed his disgraceful side until the end. Afterwards, he and Kim were taken away by the police. I plan to get alimony from Kim and both compensation and child support from John, since both are cut off from their relatives and acquaintances. They'll probably face hardships from now on. Despite everything, the little girl who once trembled in fear has now grown up wonderfully. I look forward to the future that my daughters, full of dreams, talk about. And I will live happily with my kind parents and 2 loving daughters.